Welcome to the Refrigeration Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Matthews, and we are here on day 2 of the 2022 CMPX show. And I have my good friend, Peter Frame from KeepRite Refrigeration with me. How you doing, Peter?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm super excited about the event itself, but I'm super excited to have this conversation with you because we go way back. We've known each other
Yep.
for many, many years. I really love your story about your journey in refrigeration because it's a huge journey. You know, you started out as an engineer, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And a technician, and back into engineer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? Getting
Oh,
into
okay, so we're going way back now. So where we started out, the first time I've actually experienced refrigeration was my family. My dad had a farm equipment business.
Cool.
So you're thinking about, okay, the tractors, the combines, how they throw the refrigeration, and like the air conditioning. Well, I go back to where you grab a hose, put it on with a hose clamp, and tighten it up. Hopefully, it doesn't leak, right?
Awesome.
And if it did, just put some more R12 in it. So later on, over the years, kind of thing, through the mechanical side, I went to go get my mechanical engineering. So I achieved that. So the first company that I worked for, I don't want to plug them, but anyway, it was Hussman. And at an early stage in the company, they actually had me working, it was called special engineering. So we were actually working on cases where guys were coming in with little sketches and everything else like that. So you're learning now about airflows, how to refrigerate, where they're doing this. Okay, I get it that I'm in a supermarket now. I get to know how this thing actually is working. So from there, while I was there, I figured, well, RSES was a big thing in back then. We had Copeland in Brantford, we had Hussman, we had ASCO Electric, we had a lot of these different people. And so what we did was we formed a night school course, and you know as well as I know a guy by the Greg Swears.
Yeah.
He also was at the same time going to the same time the night school course, and we actually went and did our RSES, went through 3 years of doing that, and wound up with the apprenticeships being at Hussman and stuff. I received a refrigeration ticket at that time.
Awesome.
But also at the time, like, okay, if I'm gonna, every now and again, I got a call on the weekend. Hey, you want to put an air conditioner in for me on the weekend, kind of thing. So it led into, well, if I'm doing that, well, why don't I go get my gas ticket? So I went and got my gas ticket, and then later on, I started working for another company. And what we did was, it was still part of the supermarket era. But during that time, we were reconditioning cases. And I went from engineering now into field service. So that field service took me right across Canada. We were doing work for companies like Loblaws out east.
Yeah.
We were doing Sobeys work as well too. We went out west as well too. So I was flying all over North America, kind of
Wow.
thing, just trying to do some of this stuff. And then later on, I decided to go back to school, the night school, and I received my electrical ticket as well too. So I
Wow.
became multi-ticketed, and always taking courses, because guess what? Our era came out where, well, it's no more R12, 502, stuff like that. So now you got to start learning how to reclaim. So we had to take
Yeah.
special courses. You're always keeping up on this stuff. So you're always having to, if you're keeping abreast of it, go back to school, got to learn it, kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? So later on, I did acquire and have my own business running for a while in the HVAC side of things. We were putting in large refrigeration equipment and so forth as well too. And to speed up the process a little bit, I was contracted as well too, again, all over North America, commissioning dehumidification units.
Oh,
So
wow.
I would be down in through the U.S., standing on a roof. But what is really surprising is just a matter of the people that you get to meet all the time over
Yeah.
the years. And like I say, yourself, there's other people that we got to meet. I'd be standing on a roof in BC. Person walks over and goes, "I remember you." Well, just like the show here today, I remember a person that I just met. I haven't seen him in years, and walking past, and I remember you. And the trade is very small, but again, with the small trade, you get to learn a lot of different things, what they're up to, what they're working on, and so forth. So in the past, what happened was KeepRite came and approached me, and the reason they approached me, what happened was I used to put in, if there was a project coming out where they wanted to try a prototype or something, called me up, said, "Hey, you got a customer you want to try? It's something where it's a new type of system. Would you be interested in putting it in for us, trying it out, see what you think?" So I did that. I was involved with also keeping in touch with everybody there and so forth. So they were the ones that encouraged me to say, "Hey, do you want to come off the tools? And now why not be part of our engineering group again?" And so right now I've moved through the company a little bit and looking after sort of the rack division / applications and systems. So I get on phone calls with customers and contractors that if they have an issue, let's try and resolve it kind of thing. And the other way of also trying to design for a project that is actually theirs. In other words, they come to us, got a really weird design that they want to try and fit into a weird corner or something like that. Well, why not try? Like, I mean, like I've been there, you've been there on the tools as well too. And it's just something that it's just you're relating what they have to deal with. So so that's a bit about my history.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love the part about, the networking relationship over the years, building all these different relationships with the different technicians and manufacturers over the years, and then meeting them again at like a show like this.
Yep.
So I really want to get into and talk about the design side and the engineering side. How come it and why it's so important to know as a technician? Because over the last, say, 5, 6, 7 years, I really started to involve myself in the design and engineering of a system, and I'm learning, and I feel like I'm a better technician now that I understand the design. I understand every component, what each component does. Let's talk about when you're going to design a system, the things you're thinking about, and why that's important for technicians to understand when systems they're installing and servicing.
Well, like everybody kind of thing, how many people of us we stood there in front of with a wrench looking at the piece of equipment going, okay, who designed this? There's no way I can get a wrench on this thing. Like, I mean, like, I wish the engineer was standing in front of me while we're doing it. So you have to take, which I was very lucky being in the field, being able to have that opportunity to take and say, okay, why don't we move this suction filter a little bit better where they got to get at it? Why don't we take a ball valve where you can actually get at that ball valve? Because when you're isolating a system or you're doing something like that, why don't you just get at it and make it easier? The other thing is that you got to really concentrate is the electrical side of things. Now, it is now welcome to the new computer age and somebody trying to read a compressor off their cell phone kind of thing, and the temperature's right. You have to stay up on that. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, the service call, the guy's looking at you going, my ice cream's melting. What are you going to do about it? So it makes it where you really have to be on top of that. So when you're designing the system for the guy right now kind of thing, you're asking him, what do you want? Like, in other words, how much room do you have to work around this thing? And a lot of machine rooms and stuff are very, complicated. They got to throw everything in there. And again, you're looking after his safety too, because a lot of times is, as you know too, we go up inside those machine rooms, we're the only guys walking in. Close the door, and sometimes do people remember we're up there, or do they forget about us? So the safety aspect, again, too, of being able to worry about, like, again, there are the discharge lines that are super hot to worry about. They got, again, leaks, anything. You're doing it, you're designing for the service end of things, right? Okay? All right, so,
And I really like the point of where you take a holistic approach, an outside approach, like a technician, because moving one inch could make a huge difference in a system. Because I know I really talk to a lot of apprentices and a lot of people that, they may start out in service. I tell them, you should go into construction as well and learn that side, because I learned a lot of some bad habits, but I also learned that, like, I put ball valves in ceilings for, liquid lines only, not knowing the difference. Well, how do I get to it if I need to service this case now? And so just doing that and learning that things on the construction side, on the design side, and implementing it in my service day, because I know there was many times when I got onto the service, I'm like, oh, that guy put the ball valve at the back of the case underneath. Now I got to lay down and try to reach it. So having that brain, or the understanding of how a technician would work on it, it makes a huge advantage. I'd like to talk about also is a lot of things that I've noticed doing training. For me, oil issues were a lot of issues, and you talked about electrical already. Let's talk a little bit about oil issues and what technicians can do and how you design. Actually, let's start with how you design and think about an oil management system, because there's a lot of different ones out there.
Okay, so the big thing about oil is oil doesn't refrigerate. Okay, the refrigerant does it. So in a system where, like when you get braze plate heat exchangers, you get other evaporators and so forth, if you start coating those things with oil, you're not getting any refrigeration effect. So when you're starting to design the system, you're looking at the guy saying, okay, now, if it's a parallel pipe system, are we going to be using a high pressure oil system? Are we using a low pressure? Again, as far as the application. The other thing is too, are you pumping down? You know what I mean? Like, are you shutting the system down, or are you going to continue to constantly keep it running? So that's what it revolves around, oil separators and so forth, and picking the right oil separator. So once you start that process, you want to keep the oil to the refrigeration equipment. You don't want it spreading around the system, okay? Once it leaves the system, well, I got to get it back. So everybody is in this, well, it'll come back on its own. Okay, well, how does it get back? So if you're running a parallel system, what happens is you're relying on all the compressors running because you've sized your piping based on that, right? So you've got oil traps, you've got your risers and everything else like that. Well, if you haven't sat down and really understood why that riser's there, what's happening with pressure drop and stuff, it will affect not you today, not the guy that installed it, not the guy servicing it. Where it installed is the guy that actually is paying the power bill. Because if it's the end user, he gets that magic thing in the mailbox all the time that says, it's just cost you this much money for power. And he's like, why? And it's like, well, maybe all the oil's stuck down inside the evaporator of the case, right? So how do you get that back? Well, why did it get out there in the first place? So oil management is strictly, yes, that compressor has to lubricate. So don't send it out there and try and bring it back, right? If you can help it. So right.
That's great. So let's tell everyone about what's the difference between a high pressure oil system and a low pressure oil system.
Okay, so typically if I'm doing a parallel pipe system, so if I'm using scrolls, we'll use things like OMBs. OMBs are high pressure. So basically what we're doing is with the oil separator with a coalescent, or start out with a coalescent. So the coalescent, basically you've got a filter inside there that's actually, what's happening is as the hot gas hits that filter, it's trying to squeeze it through and it's dripping the oil to the bottom. Well, that whole vessel is high pressure, right? So the high pressure is actually being injected, it's probably a nice way of saying it, injected through the OMB kind of thing back to the compressors. Now, when you get into low pressure systems, now you're using a regulation, like it almost looks like an expansion valve kind of process. What you're trying to do is down the pressure down to get a little bit above the suction pressure of the crankcase of the compressor. You would put like an oil pot or another type, something. Oil pots are the most common. And what you're doing is with the oil pot, you're trying to regulate the oil and keep that oil about half full in the compressor. Yeah, plus or minus whatever, but you're actually on the low pressure side of things. If you were to put high pressure, you're just filling the crankcase right up, right? Now, to be honest with you, people say, well, it's electronic OMPs, well, they're complicated. No, the most complicated is the oil pot trying to adjust them, because a lot of people get misled as to how to adjust them. So there is, when you're actually running the compressor, standing in a machine room late at night, looking at the thing going, what's got no oil? Hang on, don't start adjusting, let it shut down, let it stabilize, and then come back to it and see what it's actually looking like, you know what I mean? So yes, there's oil filters. A lot of people forget about this maintenance, the kind of thing, and you should be in there changing the oil filters for the guys. They do plug it up. Always taking readings. Lucky we have pressure gauges and ports and everything else that are on the systems to actually find, and we always keep saying pressure drop, pressure drop. And this is what we're trying to find in the systems, is the difference in pressures and stuff. So
excellent. I really like that. I have lots of people that don't understand how to set oil pots. What's your recommendation when setting an oil pot? Because everybody does it differently, right? So,
see, the thing is, like an oil pot, basically, when you're looking at the charts, they tell you so many turns gives you so many, degrees of pound pressure and everything else like that. Starting out kind of thing, you're going to have to really go to the charts. That's the most important thing. The other thing is, what I'd like you to do is get a gauge on the thing, right? That's the first thing. You can't just walk in the machine room without a gauge. And if you don't have your pressure gauges on it, you start moving that thing, the setting up and down, I'll tell you, there's a big warning on the side of it. You never get to see the warning until it's too late, that you turned it too many turns, and now you've wrecked that unit. 9 times 10, a lot of the guys don't understand that they did. And when they really realize is when you leave and the compressor shuts down, starts filling up with oil, because it's broken the float off. So you have to rely on, and unfortunately, it is a science. It is just a matter of you look at your chart, you look at setting it, the compressor as it's sitting idle, okay, so it runs, you can adjust it a little bit. But 9 times out of 10, when you really got to think about, the guy set this thing up, like when he's running the system, he's gone through everything, he set the unit up, he's left, okay? Mysteriously, things don't start moving around on their own kind of thing. So welcome to the new guy shows up and he goes, oh, he never adjusted it right. Check with him first, just to make sure he did. If he didn't, what happens is you're going to be starting to adjust that, and you're going to be there for a few hours trying to get it back in line.
Yeah.
Because again, you have to know your starting point too. Now, a lot of it could be plug screens, and a lot of people don't realize that there is a screen in that oil pot where it's feeding. And if it's a new system, did it get some dirt through it? I don't know. I'm standing there, you're on the phones with the guy. But again, you have to really start diagnosing that maybe it's not filling properly or fast enough because the screen is plugged, right? So you just adjusted a valve that wasn't the issue. So again, to express what it is, there's a lot of bulletins that are written up. To have the bullet in front of me today would be yes, you can do a full seminar on just how to set that unit up. Okay, it really is. It's a good topic. Yep.
Yeah, no, I usually try to talk to like the technician team. I do a lot of supermarket training, and on the low pressure systems, like you got to understand the components you're working on, like the OCV valve, for example. That's what regulates that pressure, so you're not blowing in that high pressure gas into those oil pots. So it's really understanding those, getting into those bulletins, learning how that they work. You know what I mean? That's some great points you have there. I'd like to talk about some of the troubleshooting that you do to help your customers out, because you get a lot of different calls, I'm sure. And I do a lot of troubleshooting over the years, and I even get lots of calls now and people reaching out to help out. What are some of the ones, and we even talked about one earlier about oil as well for the Copeland, the OMBs, I believe.
Yeah. See, when you take a call, it's really tough. Like you're taking calls from people you're trying to understand, like you and I have both been on the field. So it's something where you can relate to it, but you got to become, like, as you're talking to them on the phone, they're your eyes and your hands, okay? So you're asking, as you're standing there talking to the guy, you're asking him are you okay opening an electrical panel? But I don't know if he's standing, if it's up on a roof, that he's about to open a 600 volt panel.
Yeah.
And he's standing in a puddle of water, and you're the one telling him to reach for a set of, so you have to start out, I always call it the airplane list.
Yeah.
Meaning that there is a set of, you may bore the guy like saying, have you done this, this, this?
Yeah.
But you have to understand, you're on the end of the phone, that you don't want to hear anything happen to the guy,
Yeah.
okay? Next, which is a lot of the calls, and it's unfortunate, we do get some of these calls, that the first thing you ask, do you have a set of gauges with you? And you'll get an answer back, why? Why do I need a set of gauges?
Okay.
Do you have an electrical meter? Well, why do I need that? The unit's not running. I know it's not running, but you got to help me out here. You got to, can we get a pressure on the thing and find out? I've taken a couple of calls where I've asked, have you gone through the startup sheets? Like, they just even start, I had one guy tell me that, I didn't have a startup sheet done because it didn't start up. Okay, but you have to understand what that sheet's all about. It's asking you, have you tightened the electrical connections? Have you, gone through and got an electrical reading? So you're actually helping us on the phones, where I'm not standing in front of you, kind of thing, to help them guide them through it. So, but always remember, taking calls like that, it doesn't matter who you are, you got to make sure he's okay on the roof or wherever he is, because again, you don't want to hear a hang up on a phone back, right? Okay, so
I really like that. Like, it's all about safety in our industry, and I really like your approach, because I think a lot of people that are on the other line, maybe our lead technician or something, you may assume that they know what they're doing, but maybe they don't. So take that approach, really take that approach on the safety side of it, because we work with a lot of high voltage, chemicals, so it's so important to work on safety. And myself personally, I really like doing the troubleshooting as well, talking with technicians about it and showing them the different ways. Like oil, once again, I'll go back to oil. A lot of people don't understand that the velocities of that refrigerant, and this goes back to the design of the system. If you understand the design, you understand you need a certain amount of velocity going through that pipe to pull that oil back. And that's why I really think it's key to understand design of a system.
Yeah, see, again, like I say, I learned when I was down in the States working on a project, 6 compressors. What they were using it for was they were testing Caterpillar engines. And what they were actually doing is they were testing it for fuel economy and stuff. Anyways, there was a braze plate heat exchanger on there, okay? This braze plate, what happened was the distributor tubing wasn't proper inside. So what it was doing was coating the unit with oil.
Wow.
And because it was coating with oil, you could have as much horsepower in the background as you want, but we couldn't flush the oil out. So you're standing in front of the thing, watching it run, they're pounding the refrigerant to it, they're trying to make this thing work, realizing, oh shoot, we got an oil problem. And it was that simple. It was in the piping from where it was located back that we finally traced it through that, that oil's not coming back. And the guy's saying, it won't refrigerate. I don't care what you do. We have to flush it through. We have to flood the system. Well, now you're standing there with all this expensive equipment, and the guy's telling you, just flood it out with refrigerant. Oh, okay. So you
Yeah.
want to call the manufacturer of the compressors and ask him if it's okay to flood the whole system out with
yeah.
refrigerant. So we get those. Those are the things. Those are hands-on, touch, feel. Guess what? I just learned something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like we can read it in the textbook. You don't believe it until you're physically standing right in front of it and you're experiencing it hands-on, right? So it's a big thing. And then you bring that experience back into the design, saying,
Yeah.
well, that won't happen again, right? So you
Yeah.
know, and those are the things we learn. But again, the most important, oil does not refrigerate or refrigerate. So therefore, for sure, make sure the oil is to lubricate the compressor, the bearings, and everything else like that. Keep it in the system. Keep it close to the compressor.
Yeah.
Right? That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And I really like when I talk to other technicians and talk about the understanding of each component. And you don't have to learn it overnight. Your experience, it didn't happen overnight. My
No.
experience didn't happen overnight. It can be overwhelming sometimes, but take the time to learn each component and
Yeah.
how each one works specifically, if it has relays in it, if it has contacts in it, and take the time to understand them, because I see a lot of it out there where technicians are working on equipment and they don't understand how it works, which is not a problem.
No.
But they're not going then learning about the equipment that they don't know how to work on. You know what I mean? And then it's a vicious cycle. It can be a vicious cycle. So take the time to learn about those components.
Yeah, it's like today's, look at what we can bring up on our phones. You don't know about it. The old days, you'd have to go find a book, open it up, and hopefully you had the book with you in your van. Or, again, you brought out who designed this. Like you always kept saying that. And so nowadays, you have the whole encyclopedia and everything with you. But don't be scared not to ask. I give these guys 100% credit. At least if they pick up the phone and call, we're there to try and help. Everybody's there to try and help. But if I don't know, I bounce it off other people.
Yeah.
You bounce it off me. Everybody, and I do the same thing. And then our group works together. Like I said, at the beginning, when I was walking across a roof somewhere, hey, I haven't seen you in years. Hey, guess what happened here? And you start talking about and throwing ideas out, and that's actually how you're recreating something that's going to work better in the long run. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
no, and I love that. Once again, it goes back to networking and relationship and taking the time, asking the why. I like that. Like if you don't know something, just ask the why.
Yep.
You can feel intimidated, maybe nervous to ask that, and I think it's so important to ask that why, because most people, they want to help, especially refrigeration technicians.
Oh yeah, refrigeration techniques. But the tough part is don't ever be impaired. Like again, the equipment that we get, kind of thing. There's air conditioning equipment that is out there, kind of thing, and it's just a matter of running a couple lines, hooking it up, and walking away from it. But you really looked at the whole principle as to where's the outside unit, where's the A coil, where's all this. Then you get into, okay, today I'm going to do a bigger job, right? Is the evaporator 30 feet up in the air and your unit's on the ground? People are forgetting, okay, there's a lot of pressure drop, push liquid up, right? And things like what subcooling, you're starting to throw terms out there that you may have learned in school, but never really thought about it. So when you get there and it goes, well, the evaporator's not feeding. Oh, you're losing subcooling in your line. Well, it runs along the side of that building. Is it insulated? You know what I mean? So now there's flash gas. There's all this stuff where you're like, oh, okay. So now it's either being taught, but a matter of take what you've learned and apply it. That's a big thing, kind of thing, right? And the hard part is, again, you learn it in a couple months, you're back out in the field, kind of thing. And whoever you're with, as you're calling it, the mentor or whoever you're with, hopefully that person's there with you that has the understanding as well too, because you don't want to pick up bad habits to bad habits, and that's where it could get you into trouble too. So
and that's really interesting, is to try to find people that want to share their knowledge with you, because there's people in your organization that will want to help, and for sure, and if not, there's lots of other contractors. If you're willing to work and put the time in and learn this stuff, you can get a job in refrigeration anywhere in the world. Which is really good, and I really enjoy that. So let's talk about some of the most unique things you've seen as a engineer in the field, and the projects that you really like to work on, that you've maybe developed yourself, because you've been doing some great work.
Let's see. Again, I've been very lucky. I've had an opportunity. I've been down to Chile, South America.
Oh, wow.
Worked in what it was a project. They were it was actually on checkouts. Okay, so I designed a checkout system for them. I went down to Chile to actually help them put it together, and it was quite a learning curve, and to actually experience stuff like that as well too. Welcome to here to there. To be actually, we took the checkouts to the store, but you're in a different environment, in a different, I'm going to call it world really, because you and I know that a green wire is ground.
Yeah.
To them, a green wire is not ground.
Wow.
So they actually hooked it up live. So when you touched the metal, you couldn't figure out why we're blowing all these fuses and everything else like that. So here we are learning other areas. Again, I could say it like rules, okay, as far as what we have to do in Ontario could be different than what's done out west, which could be different down in New York, it's all over the place kind of thing what's actually happening. So some of the designs that have taken me, we've done some work for Bill Gates. On his farm, we were down doing 4 large racks for hydrocoolers for actually the carrots were coming out of the field. We are building the refrigeration to actually help cool the water flows down for that. We're involved just recently now with Universal Studios in Florida, where we're actually building the unit. Have 10 compressors in one of the units kind of thing, where full water cooled, but they're amusement parks and stuff like that. We'll use this water to actually on their rides or their whatever within the facility and stuff.
So cool.
So again, the project came to us just even to talk about it thing. I had a guy call me one day and say, look, I don't have any room in the back room, so I kind of need your help here. And what do you need? And he goes, well, I kind of got a little bit of space in the back here. And I said, well, if I build you sort of an L shape. And he goes, L shape. I said, yeah, the compressors will be on the one side and all the lines will be on the other with the control panels and stuff. He said, I've never seen that. Again, but he says, how do I bring in the store? Well, pretend you're bringing in the sectional couch and we'll try and bring it around the corner. But as long as you give me your store dimensions and stuff, we'll see what we can do for you.
Wow.
So sure enough, we got pictures of that being in there. Like again, every project's different. We've done, I've done pharmaceutical stuff. And so you see weird temperatures all over. Again, I saw one warehouse where the guy actually brings the transport trucks right into the warehouse, and we've designed a system where he's actually able to pull. He opens the back door of the trucks, and he's allowed to bring a product right down, so he doesn't have to unload the trucks.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, everybody's got different ideas. Work with them, be on the phone with them, but at the same time, understand how he's putting it in or where he's putting it, because if not, it's going to catch you. You know what I mean? Because he's spending a lot of money with you, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to turn the key.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And work with it, understand it. And nowadays, it's all controls. Like, how are you going to run it? But I did a project, this goes back about a year and a half ago. They used to have the old Paragon time clocks where you actually had the motor at the one end, you had all the rotary dials. This guy insisted that's all he wanted. So it was a chase to find. We still found it. Yeah, you can. Wow. They still buy them. But I said to him, that clock is worth more than like maybe a CPC or Danfoss, something like that. Are you sure? Yeah, that's the only one I got, the only one I trust. And it was built for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's super impressive.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. One of the questions I would like to ask you is, what advice would you give to a new technician coming into commercial refrigeration? Really, what should they be looking for, starting or looking out for when they start in commercial refrigeration?
Just remember the coffee order. When they're taking and they start into it, what happens is, unfortunately, everybody starts at the bottom.
Yeah.
And, you and I know that when we started into it, it's like you're going to be the coffee runner or the gluer fitter or the runner or whatever. But if you pay attention to what's going on, the refrigeration trade, it is tough. You are slugging pipe. You are around different chemicals. You're gluing. You're crawling around the floor. You're in the mud. You're everything else like that. And the trade skills, again, you're working with hot things. You're working with electrical. You're working with just understand what you're actually dealing with. Now, and I get, okay, so today I'm running for coffee, but look at what you're actually in. When you're actually at these facilities or in the construction site, you got plumbers, electricians, everybody. Look around to see what they're doing too. Understand what they're doing, why they're bringing this whole thing together at the end to make it work. Again, over the years, you will get to where you're starting out as a young apprentice, you're working a few more hours, finish the course. As well as I know how many guys are out there that never did finish. Because they get into it where you get into the money aspect, getting paying bills and everything else. And all of a sudden, for some reason, they don't want to finish the schooling and stuff. And it's so important to get that ticket, put that ticket in your pocket, and then go learn something else.
Yeah.
Don't stop. Because everything's around there for you, okay?
Yeah.
So that's big. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly how I did it. Like, I had to move provinces to get into commercial refrigeration, and then I started at the bottom, same thing. I did the coffee, but then they were like, okay, start moving pipe, okay. Start welding pipe, okay. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then just continue to try to learn. Okay, you can put the cases together, and then weld pipe, I guess. And then, okay, why don't you change this compressor? And then, why don't you help me with the wiring? Why don't you help me with the controls? Why don't you help with startup and commission? You gotta be eager. You gotta want to learn it. And some days are not the easiest days, especially in refrigeration.
Yep.
But if you want to learn and you want to grow and you take the time to do that, you can be very, very successful in this industry, because you can work anywhere in the world. You traveled all around the world and did refrigeration, same as me, and anybody can do that if they want.
Yep.
And I really like the thing that you said is, like, continue to learn.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You've been to university, engineering, refrigeration, gas fitting, electrical, and you still continue to keep learning.
Oh, you have to. As I say, the compressor manufacturers are always coming out, but it's the control side of things. You can't get intimidated by it. If you don't know, you just pick up a phone. The thing is, because again, it's an energy market today, and we're worrying about how much it actually costs to run. Okay, so how do I make it more efficient to run? Okay, what do I need component-wise to make it do it? But work with the person that certain people only are brought up under a certain type of control. So you work with them on that, learning it as well too. We have new refrigerants all coming out. I have a friend of mine that called up the other day that he's working with now in the new fridges, the isobutanes. What equipment does he need? And here it's just in small things where they're taking training courses and stuff like that. Welcome us getting into propane and stuff as well too. What safety stuff, what tanks, what everything. How do I handle approaching that now? Like you're whether it be refrigeration as far as the homeowner kind of thing into just a regular central air, a ductless split or anything like that. Again, realize the chemical you're using, but you're now in my era kind of thing as well too. We had 3. If you had it in a service band, 12, 502, 22, we're heroes, right? So now again, sky's the limit. Just knowing what you're actually working with, right? Be very safe. Okay?
Yeah. I like that. And I do talk to a lot of technicians, and I say, understand your customers, build that relationship with your customers, know what refrigerants they have on there. You be educated and above. Your customer shouldn't be telling you what refrigerant you should be like, these are refrigerants, but let's go with this refrigerant because we know it's going to work. We put it all in your systems instead of having 15 different systems. But that refrigerant may not be in my vehicle. You know what I mean? And then just build that relationship with your customers on that. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you, Peter, being here today.
No, great. Thank you.
Continue to have build a relationship together. Where can people find out about KeepRite Refrigeration if they want to learn more?
We have, like I say, everything. Welcome to the websites and stuff like that. You can go to the KeepRite website. We're on the commercial side. Guys, if you're dealing with us, we're the commercial side. We're not the residential. So therefore, go to our websites, check us out. If you don't know, we have our booth here as well too for people to stop in and take a look at. Just give us a call. Our number, and like I say, very powerful on the websites today, guys. So look it up.
Awesome,
okay?
Peter. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, everyone.